Yeah, I think that, well, there's one quote that I like. It's that a paycheck is good, but it's not good enough. We have to care for our employees. And I think that's something to remember, because sometimes as leaders, managers, like, well, they're getting paid, I don't need to appreciate them. But no, a paycheck is good, but it's not good enough.
Hi and welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. I'm your host Neha Murthy, and let's begin with a quick introduction of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-way integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM, that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. We have with us today Pandit Dasa. Pandit Dasa is a mindful leadership expert, author, and motivational keynote speaker. His inspirational speeches aim to help organizations create a more mindful workplace culture, which increases employee engagement, retention, and productivity. He encourages leadership and co-workers to appreciate and celebrate the success and contributions of others. This attitude fosters trust, enhances teamwork, and greatly impacts employee performance. He emphasizes the importance of leading without ego and highlights the importance of cultivating self-awareness and personal growth and development. He has spoken at a TEDx conference and has been featured on PBS, NPR, NY Times, and writes for the Huffington Post. In his book Urban Monk, he writes about how the collapse of his family's multi-million-dollar jewelry business led him to spending 15 years as a monk in the New York City. We're thoroughly intrigued to learn more about his journey and to gain some great insights into his opinions today. Welcome to peopleHum, Pandit. It's an absolute honor to have you speak with us today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for reaching out to me.
It's absolutely our pleasure. So, hopping right into the questions, Pandit. As a former monk yourself, and as someone who ardently believes in the virtue of mindfulness, how would you say that very quality helps us in areas such as employee engagement, retention, and productivity?
So yeah, as you mentioned that I spent some time as a former monk, so maybe I should just tell you how that happened, because usually people are very curious what's a monk doing talking about employee retention engagement. so I grew up in, I was of course born in India, but I grew up in Southern California in Los Angeles. My parents came over with very simple and humble beginnings, didn't come over with much money. This was in the early 80s. They worked really hard, 7 days a week. And ultimately, we became millionaires actually in Los Angeles within a 7 or 8 year period. So we began living that so-called American dream much faster than we thought we would. But as life has its cycles, within about the late 1980s, early 1990s, my parents' jewelry factory actually caught on fire and we ended up losing everything. So we went completely broke, went from having nothing to everything and nothing again. And then my journey takes me to post-communist Bulgaria for a couple of years in the early 1990s, where no one spoke English. We did some business there for a couple of years, moved back to the US. Then I went to a monastery in Mumbai, India in 1999. Thought I'd be there for a few months, spent 6 months there, came back, moved into a monastery in New York City. I thought I'd be there only a few months, but I ended up spending a total of 15 years living as a monk in New York City. And then 6 years ago, I left the monastic life because I wanted to take the messages that I had learned into the corporate environment. Because during the time I was a monk, I was doing a lot of lecturing and speaking and teaching on university campuses like Columbia University, New York University, and just traveling around the country speaking on college campuses on mindfulness and how to reduce stress and anxiety. So, and then I just felt like taking this message into a corporate environment. And so that's what I did. And, so you're asking me how mindfulness can help us with sort of qualities as employee engagement, retention, and productivity. And I think what the huge part of what mindfulness does, it helps us become more self-aware of ourselves, right? And I feel that the more we get in touch with ourselves, the more we become self-aware, the more we're able to get in touch with others. And as a result of that, mindfulness can help us develop more emotional intelligence and empathy, being able to put ourselves in other people's shoes. And I think this is going to be one of the most important qualities for any manager, anyone in a leadership role who's overseeing a group of people. if you don't have emotional intelligence, if you're not actively cultivating it, if you're not cultivating empathy, not able to understand what your workforce is going through, what they're experiencing, what their challenges are, not just professionally, but also personally to some degree. If we're not able to put ourselves in those shoes, then we'll be out of touch with our workforce. Because people need to know that they're being treated like human beings. They don't just want to be treated as a number, right? They don't want to be just treated as an employee. Behind the work, there's so many things going on in everyone's personal life, especially right now during COVID. We're working from home. For some people, that may be a luxury. They're thrilled that they're working from home. But from what I'm seeing and when I'm speaking to corporations, what I'm learning is that for most people, it's a real challenge. Like the fact that they're not able to interact face to face with employees, that's difficult. The fact that you're competing with so many other environments, because the home is a very distracting place. The home is just filled with distractions. You could be working and you could look at your sofa and you're like, well, that sofa needs to be changed. Look at that spot. I never saw that before. Like there's so many distractions around the house. The kids are there. And if both spouses are working, then they're competing for workspace. And the kids are also competing for the same spaces because they're virtually at school. So it's such a challenge. So I think it's important that leaders and managers of all levels learn to develop empathy, because then they can really understand the challenges and obstacles that are going on in the lives of their workforce. And when their workforce feels that their managers and leaders care for them, that is how it's going to improve retention. And when an individual feels cared for, they're going to be more engaged at work. They're going to want to put their heart and soul into their work. And when someone puts their heart and soul into their work, they have a greater sense of loyalty to that place. Naturally, they'll be more productive. Because when they see that the manager actually cares, the leader actually cares, they're going to want to put their heart and soul into that workplace and into everything that they're doing.
Definitely. That makes so much of sense. I mean, it has a personal touch when you're directly interacting with your employees and knowing what is going on in their life, and that doubles up their productivity, as you said.
Yeah, and I think mindfulness is not just about sitting, closing your eyes and meditating under a mountain or something, or in a mountain or in a cave or something like that. It's about being in touch. Like, what am I going through? What are my challenges? Is it possible that others are going through these challenges? Maybe taking the time out to understand their challenges, professional and personal. So if someone isn't being as productive as you wanted them to be, maybe you know that maybe when somebody in their family just, I don't know, got hospitalized because of COVID, or maybe they haven't seen their loved one in 10 months because of curfews and travel bans and things like that. Maybe there's a lot of real internal struggle going on. And if we can sympathize with that, there's going to be so much more loyalty we're going to get from that individual that it's hard to imagine. So I think mindfulness, I think it's important for us to take out those moments of mindfulness and really do some of those breathing exercises and focusing exercises, get in touch with ourselves, and as a result of that, also get in touch with those around us.
Wow, that's a beautiful answer. Thank you so much for that. And also, can you tell us about your organization work, Mindful Corp, and the work that you've been doing there for the past 6 years?
Yeah, so basically, the whole idea behind Work Mindful is just to work more mindfully. The idea is that this is not just for leaders and managers, but really what I want to emphasize is that mindfulness can help us in so many different aspects. One is, of course, it can just help us lower stress. How does it do that? It's simple that, there's a lot of breathing and focusing exercises that, people in India obviously are much more familiar with, but around the world now, it's catching on like wildfire. So people are realizing that there's a connection between our mind and our breath. If we're breathing in a proper way, it actually reduces stress from the mind and stress and tension from the body. Just simple breathing exercises actually have the ability to do that. It's a simple thing. And so mindfulness can help us all become less stressed. And if we're less stressed, then naturally we'll be more focused, we'll be more productive, we'll be more positive in the workplace environment. So my whole idea behind Work Mindful is to create a positive and mindful workplace culture. And that culture starts with each individual, because it only takes one individual to kind of spoil a culture or an environment. So the idea is the more we can learn to be mindful, to take breaks during our day and take some deep breaths, take a moment to feel grateful for whatever you have in your life in that moment. The more we can do that, the better. When we're grateful, then we're happy. And when we're happy, that affects others as well. So then we'll interact with each other in a positive way, right? And also part of Work Mindful Corp is, I really want to encourage individuals that even with your colleagues, try to appreciate their contributions to the workplace. Because generally, we have a whole checklist of all the great things, check, 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 all the great things I've done. Look at all the value I'm bringing to this organization. No one else is doing what I'm doing. I work harder than everyone else. I do this. I've done so much. Great. Not taking anything away from that. But everyone else is thinking the same thing. Now, wouldn't it be great if instead of spending that much time about thinking about how much I'm doing, why not take a portion of that mental energy and think about, wow, what is she doing? And look at all the amazing work he's doing. And him and her and all of these people are doing such amazing work. Just doing that will open up our mind and make us so much more positive. And then that is how we can genuinely start to appreciate the contributions of our coworkers. And when we do that, it actually enhances trust and teamwork between individuals. When we appreciate each other's success and when we celebrate each other's success, that is genuinely how teamwork and trust is built. And so really, this is the idea behind Work Mindful, is to help create those positive cultures within a workplace, and also to teach leaders how to practice mindfulness, how to lead without ego, how to, again, lead in a way that encourages and inspires others, and not lead by using just fear tactics.
Wow, as you said, breathing properly, that itself is such a tiny thing, but it's such an impactful thing that, creates a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, right now our breaths are very shallow. We're breathing just enough to stay alive.
Yeah.
Now, imagine what more we can do with it if we actually practice it properly. It's almost like you have a Ferrari in your garage, like one of the fastest cars, and you only drive it 15 miles an hour. Like, you've got a Ferrari and you're only taking it 15 miles an hour. What's the point of having it? So it's like we have a powerful engine. We're only driving it 5 miles an hour right now because we don't know that we can do more with it. It's almost like you don't know that you're supposed to shift gears in the Ferrari for it to go faster. You can't just go 100 miles an hour in first gear. I mean, maybe you can, it'll wreck the engine. But you see, so what we're doing is learning to change gears in our breathing so we can get more out of our own Ferrari. We all have a Ferrari.
Absolutely. And as you said about, celebrating the success and employee appreciation, that brings me down to the next question. Employee appreciation is one of the, the importance of validation of work, and appreciation has become more relevant now than ever, right? And it has become more difficult now, especially in this pandemic, for leaders to indulge in employee appreciation in a way that is perceived similarly by everybody. So what would you say is the right way of looking employee appreciation at a post-pandemic workplace?
I think that pre-pandemic, mid-pandemic, and post-pandemic, I think appreciation, I don't know if it's any harder, because how hard is it for me to call up a colleague and say, hey, you know what? I really appreciated what you said in that meeting. I think it really inspired everyone. I really felt inspired. So thank you so much for doing that. Like, how hard is it to do that? How hard is it to say, hey, you know what? You guys have been working really hard. Why don't you take a half day off on Friday? Like, that's not hard. No, I don't see how it's any harder now than it was before. I just really don't. Hey guys, we're going to give you an extra $20. Treat yourself to some lunch. You guys have worked really hard. Like, aren't these all the same things that we were doing before? So instead of maybe, you could sending an email to the teams like, hey guys, you did a great job. I really appreciate it. Each one of you contributed. So, you worked overtime and you really cared for each other. And I really appreciate the positive culture you created from your teamwork and endeavors. that takes 5 minutes to write an email like that, or getting on a quick Zoom call and just appreciating people. So I really don't think it's any harder, whether it was pre-pandemic, mid, or post. It's just a matter of whether we value the whole idea of appreciation or not. If a manager or leader or even a colleague or coworker sees the importance of it, nothing is going to stop them from engaging in meaningful communication and meaningful appreciation, right? When we really want to do something, we'll do it. We'll find times to do it, and we'll find ways to do it. Nothing will stop us from doing it, right? Before, I was going on stages in front of people and speaking. Now that that's on hold, it's not that meetings have stopped. I'm still doing Zoom calls. I'm still doing speeches like this virtually. So there's always ways to do it. And anytime someone is saying that, oh, I think it's harder now, I think that's just an excuse because maybe they don't want to. Maybe it's a little different. Maybe it just requires to think differently on how to appreciate. But the communication tools are all right there. I can still see you. You can still see me. I can still type out a message. I can still give you a half day off. I can still send you a little extra for something that you can do for get a lunch for your team or something like that. None of that actually stops. So I think that if there's a desire to do it, we will definitely 100% find ways to appreciate it. And then also not just one person, a leader appreciating. When the leaders appreciate, I think it really shows everyone else that we value appreciation. And then then they can encourage everyone else to also try to appreciate one another. But it kind of does have to come from top down. But I don't think we should wait for the top. I think we should just start doing it ourselves, because it's every human being's duty. In one sense, it's our duty to appreciate what others are doing. We can actually take on that leadership role internally, even if we don't have the title, just by acting like a leader. And a leader is supposed to appreciate when someone does good work. Even if you're in competition with that individual, even if you're in competition with your coworker and they do something good, that's the last person you want to appreciate. But why not go ahead and do it? Why not go ahead and congratulate them, make their day, make them feel better, and have trust and faith that, I did something positive for this person. Something positive will come my way at some point in my life, and that's it. Right? So yeah, I think when we really want to do it, I don't think a pandemic or anything can really stop us from appreciating. That's just a desire and will to do it. We find ways to get things done. And this is not hard, I think.
Absolutely. It just takes a one line or a one sentence. Just after finishing the work, you just say it. Yeah, it's good. And that's the biggest thing there, right there.
Yeah. And I think also it's really important when we're talking about appreciation. And I think it's more meaningful and more valuable when we can get specific in the appreciation, right? Like if I say, hey team, great job. Okay, that's nice. But I did something maybe different than what you did in the team. And now it's really the manager's or leader's role to understand, like, okay, this person or whoever's in charge of that team to say, hey, I really like this part of the project that you worked on because it helped our client do this. And that person's like, wow, they really noticed. Like, imagine if someone says, hey, something very specifically that you did, that you're like, oh, wow, they really noticed. So of course, if you have a team of 50 or 100, you can't do that. But the point is that there's obviously managers and who have smaller groups. As much as this appreciation can be specific, I think that individual understands that you put a lot of thought into it. And that builds trust. So I think that broad appreciation is good, but when we can get specific, that's really powerful.
Absolutely. It makes much more personalized, right?
100%. And we're all persons. We like things to be personalized.
Definitely. And also, as we spoke earlier about how being mindful, increases your productivity as well. What are some more techniques that you personally follow to be productive and consistent?
So just to understand how mindfulness can help us be more productive, I like to compare the mind to one of these, right? A smart device. How is that? When you have too many apps open on this thing, it slows it down, right? And it drains the battery. Now, how many apps do you think are open up here in this smart device, the mind? Too many.
Yeah.
Probably dozens, maybe hundreds of apps are running in the background from last week, from last month, from last year, from last decade even. So what mindfulness does, it allows us to come into the present moment. And through these breathing and focusing and gratitude exercises, we're learning to close out the apps that are open, but we no longer need them. So if you used the Uber app a week ago, you don't need it still running on here. You need to close it out. So we have a lot of Uber and other apps, banking apps, all kinds of apps running around up here. And we need to close them out. And when we close out the apps, then our phone works faster. Same thing with us. When we close out the unnecessary apps up here, we work faster. We have more clarity. So what I personally do is I do some breathing techniques, focusing techniques, like taking, and this is not something, that you have to do for like 20 minutes. You can even do it for like 2 or 3 minutes if you want to. When you wake up, before reaching for your phone, right? Immediately, it's like the alarm goes off and we're just feeling for the phone. There it is. Okay. Like, and with one eye, just like looking at it. Like, how about just when we wake up, just taking a few deep breaths, right? Take a few deep breaths, take 10 deep breaths and just focus on the breath. Don't think of anything. Don't look at the news because the news means it's bad news. That's why, otherwise it wouldn't make it on TV. If it's good news, no one's going to watch it. People like bad news. So that's what's there. We don't need to put that in here. It's almost like putting junk food in your body right in the morning. Right? We don't need junk food up here as the first meal of the day. Right? So a good meal gets us off to a good positive start. So why not start our day off with 5 or 10 deep breaths, take a moment to feel grateful for a few things that are happening in your life, and then get out of bed. Do the same thing before a meeting. Before a meeting starts, take a moment to take 5 breaths, think about the people you're going to have a meeting with. Take a moment to just in your mind appreciate the people on who you're going to have a meeting with. Like, wow, this person does this, and this person does this. Wow, this person helped me last week and I forgot. And just think about you're just switching your gears to a more positive mindset. Now you're like, wow, these are amazing people I'm about to have a meeting with. And then you start that meeting. Or now when the work day's over, you're about to interact with your family, do it again. So it's not like just one 15-minute block. I think you could do it 3-4 times a day for 1 to 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, whatever your time allows. Take like 5 or 10 deep breaths, really straighten your back, focus on some of the positive things that are happening in your life, some of the people in your life that have been supporting you, encouraging you, inspiring you. And that's a great way to do that throughout the day. And I think that can help us be more positive. And when we are more positive, naturally, we'll be more pleasant and happy, and we'll be more productive. Happy people are more productive.
Wow, that's such a unique and a simplified version of how mindfulness actually works. I really love that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's actually simpler than we think it is.
Yes, absolutely.
We don't have to complicate it. Sometimes we like to complicate things, and we think that when things are complicated, then that's when they work. But the simple things in life actually do work, and I think this is one of them.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that. And lastly, before wrapping up the interview, do you have a quote that best defines your feelings towards the future of work, the workplace, and you?
Yeah, I think that, well, there's one quote that I like. It's that a paycheck is good, but it's not good enough. We have to care for our employees. And I think that's something to remember, because sometimes as leaders, managers, like, well, they're getting paid, I don't need to appreciate them. But no, a paycheck is good, but it's not good enough. We need to do more. We need to care for our employees. So that's what I would say.
Wow. Thank you so much, Pandit. It was an absolute pleasure interviewing you. And there are so many simple and yet effective techniques that you've taught us throughout the interview. And it's beneficial for everyone. I'm sure of that.
Well, thank you so much, Sneha, and thank you for taking this time to reach out to me and to interview me. And I'm really hoping that, folks can take advantage of some of these techniques and implement them into their own life. And if it's possible, I can show you very quickly. I have a couple of books here. This is about my journey as a monk. It's called Urban Monk. That's me when I was a monk. I wrote this a few years ago. This is me standing on the rooftop of our building in New York City. This is about my journey. And more recently, I published this book called Closing the Apps, How to Be Mindful at Work and at Home. You can see all the apps that are open in the... So basically, this is a follow-up to the lectures I give in corporations and how at work and at home, we can be more mindful every single day. So those are, the books can be found on my website, panditdasa.com. So
Absolutely. Congratulations on your new publish, and I'm definitely going to read that book for sure.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.